Kia. You know the types of cars they produce, sensible ones with a 7-year warranty. Good they may be, but you wouldn't call them stylish.
Well, you can now though. This is the Stinger and it's a 5-door coupe that is, wow, just look at it.
It's Kia saying they can produce sexy, stylish, premium cars as well as the conventional stuff. So what you're looking at here is Kia's take on the Audi A5 Sportback.
But is it a case of style over substance? And is this car really as good as it looks? And is it a car you should be buying? Well, I'm going to be answering all of those questions in this review. But before I start, make sure you subscribe to the channel and press that little bell icon so you're notified exactly when one of our videos goes live.
Let's take a closer look at this then. It certainly looks like no other Kia in the model range, and that's for one very good reason. This is supposed to be the flagship, a car that shows once and for all Kia has transformed itself into a desirable brand.
Whether it manages that total brand transformation is, quite frankly, a question for another day. What I do know is this is an incredibly good-looking car. It's so good, in fact, people don't think this is a Kia. And that's because it's long, low and wide and something you wouldn't expect from that very sensible Korean car maker. It's also far more daring than this car's chief competition, the Audi A5 Sportback and the Volkswagen Arteon. In here though, and it's almost a bit of a letdown, there's no lovely design details in here, nothing that makes you feel special, nothing to let you know you've bought something that's a 5-door sporting GT car like the Stinger is. I mean, it's such a sharp contrast to the exterior design. Take the infotainment system, for example. It's absolutely fine, but in a car costing this much, it's just a bit ordinary. It's fine in a Kia Ceed, but not quite so much in the Stinger. Having said that, the quality in here is very good. It's not quite up to the Audi A5 level, but everything feels really good. There's a nice soft touch dashboard here, all the materials, real metal trim, everything just seems really nicely put together. There's a good bit of storage in here as well. 2 cup holders, we've got a wireless charging pad here with a little USB charging port. Under here we've got some more storage. The glove box, well look at that, it's absolutely enormous. It's large enough for a 2-litre bottle of water. It's good really because the door bins certainly don't pass it. Now, whilst I do moan about the design in here, it does feel a little bit more special than a Volkswagen Arteon, for example. I don't know if I'm being just a bit too critical. Let me know what you think in the comments section below.
As it's the flagship of the Kia range, there are no BOGO trim levels here. There's the GT line that gets 18-inch alloys, heated leather seats, touchscreen sat-nav, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It also gets a head-up display, a limited slip differential and loads of safety kit. It's only the halogen headlights that let the side down. GT Line S adds a Harman Kardon sound system, heated and ventilated front seats, a powered tailgate and LED headlights, while the GTS gets Brembo brakes, adaptive dampers, 19-inch alloys and plush Nappa leather upholstery.
Now, for a sporting GT car like this, you'd expect criminal levels of backseat space. You'd expect to be cramped and claustrophobic, but not so in the Stinger because look at the amount of space I've got. Look at all this knee room. Look at all of that. Well, it's almost like a limo back here. There aren't limo levels of headroom, however. I'm just over 5'10" and I'm absolutely fine. But if you're over 6 foot, you're probably going to struggle. However, you've got room to actually slouch a bit, and then headroom is absolutely fine. Now, you can just about fit 3 people back here. The middle seat person, well, they do sit on a bit of a raised seat, and again, headroom is really tight, but they won't be struggling too much for space because of these really wide footwells and this really narrow centre transmission tunnel. You've got an armrest, as you'd expect, with 2 cup holders. There's ISOFIX points. You won't be losing the caps because they are attached, so it's really easy to load child seats in if you want to. There's a 12-volt socket down there and a USB charging port. Like I say, the Stinger is really surprising back here.
The Stinger only comes as a hatchback, so it means loading stuff in is very straightforward. An electric tailgate comes as standard on the top 2 trim levels, but in terms of size, it's quite a way off the boots you'll find in the Audi A5 Sportback and the BMW 4 Series Gran Coupe, which is a bit of a shame. The engine range is pretty straightforward though. There's a diesel, designed to appeal to fleets, and it's a 2.2 with 197 brake horsepower, and it can return a claimed 50 mpg and emits 147 grams per kilometre of CO2. There's also a 2-litre petrol with 244 brake horsepower and a 3.3-litre V6.
The diesel will take up the vast majority of Stinger sales, but don't overlook the petrols, because there are 2 great petrols in the Stinger. There's the 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo petrol with around 245 brake horsepower. It's a really punchy engine actually, quite low down, and it's just a nice engine. But then there's this, which is reserved exclusively for the top-line GTS trim, and it's a 3.3-litre V6 that does 168 miles an hour and 0 to 62 in 4.7 seconds. 4.7 from a Kia! It's actually a very lusty engine, this. Really good power delivery. Low down in the rev range, this thing absolutely fires away. And don't think it's some lazy, lethargic, great big V6, because this thing has easily got the measure of an Audi S5 Sportback. It really does go. Goodness me. It does shift this, and it's backed up with a pretty good gearbox. It's not quite as snappy as a gearbox in an S5 Sportback or a BMW 4 Series Gran Coupe, but it's not too bad at all. You can take manual control with the paddles as well. It's a pretty good gearbox. Now the Stinger is exclusively rear-wheel drive. There's no four-wheel drive option like there is in the BMW or in the Audi. So it means this thing's got really sharp, agile handling. Now top spec models get a limited slip differential. It just helps to keep things in check, because this thing can get a little bit fruity at the tail sometimes if you're a little bit too gun-ho with the throttle, or if you turn the car into Sport and Sport Plus mode, which turns the traction control off completely. Yeah, this thing does like to shake its bottom around a little bit, but it's really nice. It doesn't feel too overwhelming, and it's a nice sort of antidote to the Quattro four-wheel drive system in an Audi S5 Sportback. And it's matched up with really nice steering, actually. It's not brimming with feel, but it's more feelsome than the pretty dead and lifeless steering in the Audi A5 Sportback, and the surprising elasticity you get in the BMW 4 Series Gran Coupe. The steering in this is probably the best of all of them, actually, and this thing just feels nice and agile. It is pretty heavy though, at just over 1,800 kilograms, but it doesn't feel too heavy. Like I say, it feels quite agile, quite light of foot. Now when you play around with the drive modes in this car, you can flip from comfort, that's the default mode, there's an eco, there's a smart mode, but if you dial it up to Sport and Sport Plus, this GTS gets adaptive dampers as standard, and yes, the ride does firm up a little bit, but not badly at all by any stretch of the imagination. And generally speaking, if I kick it back into comfort mode, the ride on this car is really very good, nice and supple. The whole car is actually very, very surprising. You can cover great distances in this car, and it not only does it feel sporty and agile when it needs to, but it feels comfortable and serene at the same time. It's a really good, impressive car.
Overall, the Stinger is a hugely likeable car. It's not perfect, but it is interesting to look at, be in, and is good to drive. Whether it's good enough for Audi drivers to make the switch to a Kia remains to be seen, but the Stinger really does justify a look. If you enjoyed this video, then take a look at my Audi A5 Sportback review, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. You can do that by pressing the car buy logo. Thanks for watching.